Vehicle occupant, place your hands on the wheel and do not move. This is an enhanced federal inspection, Agent Marcos Harker announced, his voice measured, but edged with an authority that left no room for humanity. Nadine Price lifted her chin slightly, fingers steady on the leather steering wheel. The checkpoint was quiet for only a breath, just long enough for the wind to whisper over highway asphalt. Then the flashing lights ramped up in reflection across her windshield, throwing red-blue pulses across her skin. This lane is designated for individuals flagged under discretionary review, Harker continued, stepping closer. His hand hovered just above the holster, not drawn, not threatening, but undeniably present. Turn off the engine. Comply verbally. Nadine obeyed, her voice even. Turning off the engine now. I am not refusing. I am requesting you state the specific statute authorizing discretionary classification of my vehicle. Harker didn't answer the question. Instead, he spoke into his shoulder mic. Sector 4, Unit Harker initiating secondary. Time 092713. License plate TX-7GJ-114. Occupant is non-compliant with inspection posture. Imprisonment. A pause. He looked at her again, expression unreadable but unnervingly sure of his ground. I just complied, Nadine replied, her tone calm but precise. Your body cam is recording. Let the record show full compliance. Unborn of voices began from vehicles behind her. Someone rolled down a window. A phone camera lifted, recording. Harker's jaw remained tight. Step out of the vehicle. Hands visible. If you delay further, I will consider that an obstruction of a federal checkpoint. Relinquin slowly unbuckled her seatbelt. I am stepping out, she said, projecting clearly for the growing audience. I have made no threatening movements. I am requesting you state the reason for escalation. As she pushed open the door, the breeze caught the hem of her blazer. The sun had fully broken through the clouds now, igniting the patrol SUV lights into a sharp strobe that washed out shadows on the pavement. Harker took one step back and extended a gloved hand toward the hood of her car. Place your palms flat here. Failure to do so will result in immediate detention. Behind him, another agent approached, adjusting his vest. People were now filming openly. Nadine placed her hands on the hood without resistance. For the record, she said, you have not articulated a legal basis for frisk. Harker reached for her wrists. Immigration from the watching cars broke the silence. Do you even know who that is? Affirmative. Step away from the vehicle and keep your palms visible at all times, Agent Harker instructed, his tone exactly as flat as a training video, yet there was something unmistakably personal in the way his eyes narrowed on Nadine's every movement. Simmons' hands remained on the hood. Heat from the engine rose beneath her palms. Cameras from two vehicles back were now clearly raised. A mother in a minivan whispered to her teenage son, "Record all of it. Do not stop." Agent Ramirez approached from the side, adjusting his vest. "Enhanced boundary screening authorized," he declared loud enough for the watching crowd, as if reading from a script. Nadine kept her voice measured. "State the nature of your suspicion. I have not refused instruction. I am fully compliant." Corrections didn't look at her. Instead, he positioned himself so the crowd could see. This subject is being inspected for concealed contraband. Do not interfere, he announced, projecting outward rather than at Nadine. Without warning, he tapped the hood twice, a silent cue. Ramirez began a visible frisk, running hands along Nadine's arms, then down each leg in full view. A gasp rippled through the onlookers. Immigration. You are making physical contact without articulable probable cause, Nadine said, her voice low but clear. That is an unlawful escalation. Ma'am, Harker replied, finally turning toward her. You do not decide what constitutes escalation. Federal authority has been initiated. A man from the cars called out, She said she's cooperating. Why are you searching her in public? Harker lifted a hand toward the crowd. Remain in your vehicles. This is a controlled federal action under national security. Relieved. Nadine's blazer sleeve slipped slightly as Ramirez moved toward her waistline. Her breath caught, not in fear, but in calculation. A bystander's voice cut the air again, louder this time. Shimmer. She's not resisting. This isn't protocol, this is a show. Keep your cameras steady, Nadine said, not raising her voice, but the clarity of her words cut through the checkpoint like a siren. Do not intervene, but do not look away. What happens here must be seen and recorded accurately. Agent Harker stepped forward as if to block her from view, but the crowd only lifted their phones higher. This is not just about me, she continued, eyes still forward, hands still on the hood. Document everything. Preserve the footage. If your rights matter, your recording is your protection. Ramirez reached for the cuffs. A hush fell, not out of obedience, but anticipation. Shimmer emerging the lights, engines idled like held breath, waiting for the next move. Nadine had left her hotel just after sunrise, the morning still cool as she merged onto Highway 35. Her dashboard screen displayed the route to the Fort Worth Federal Annex, arrival time 11:02 a.m., just minutes before she was scheduled to hand-deliver a sealed memo drafted under the Department of Justice's upcoming Operation Secure Line. The memo was to be reviewed directly by her father, the U.S. Attorney General, before a national briefing set for that afternoon. Her phone buzzed once. Eli, text. Media anticipation building. Once this memo is filed, it becomes part of the federal record. No delays. Had her Bluetooth. I'll be there on time. It's routine transit, she said, almost as if speaking it aloud could make it true. But as the next checkpoint warning sign appeared on the highway shoulder, Federal inspection ahead, she felt a small shift in her breathing. Not fear. Recognition. This road wasn't just a route. It was history repeating. And this time it would be recorded. Mozilla Dean's credentials weren't ornaments of prestige. They were proof of discipline forged under public scrutiny. A framed photo from the Temple University School of Law, where she graduated top 5% of her class, surfaced briefly in memory. Her name called, the applause muted by the presence of cameras covering the attorney. General's daughter earns her J.D. She had spent the years since in federal litigation, not because of legacy, but because every courtroom she entered reminded her that credibility must be earned in evidence and procedure, not birthright. Her tablet resting on the passenger seat still displayed yesterday's case summary. United States v. Delacroix Freight. Preliminary injunction granted. Her signature appeared on the filing. A quiet notification blinked in the corner of the screen. Meeting reminder, 11 a.m. Secure line memo, introduction. DOJ legal command. She exhaled once. Calm. Focused. Shimmers. She wasn't just passing through Texas. She was on mission. And she was right on schedule, until the checkpoint appeared. Her brother's photo sat tucked behind her sun visor. Avery, age 19, smiling in his ROTC uniform the day before he left to train near the southern border. He had called her once after a routine checkpoint stop. His voice had been steady, but she heard what he didn't say. They looked at me and didn't see a citizen. They saw a risk. That unspoken memory stayed with her more than any courtroom victory. She touched the corner of the photo gently, the plastic sleeve warm from the morning sun. Avery, you always said justice isn't a title, it's a responsibility. Keep going. I'm proud of you. Immigration, her breath steadied. Missions this trip wasn't just protocol, it was personal. Every checkpoint, every badge, every camera was a reminder. She wasn't fighting for her own authority. She was fighting for his future, and everyone like him. And that meant staying silent, for now. Trump Het alert chimed again on her GPS, but her eyes flicked briefly toward the leather portfolio on the passenger seat. Inside it, sealed, Embossed with the Department of Justice crest was the secure line memo bearing her father's signature on the cover page. A small white badge clipped to the folder read, "Visitor, Attorney General Guest Access, National Command Wing." She adjusted it so it wouldn't be visible through the windshield. Not yet. Appeared on her screen from Eli. Reminder, no one is authorized to open that folder except command. Do not present your badge unless necessary. Nadine slid the portfolio deeper out of sight. Outside, the road narrowed into lanes. Inside, her resolve sharpened. The past and the present were about to collide. The memory didn't arrive gently. It pressed in, uninvited, the way a siren cuts through silence. Nadine had been 12 years old, sitting in the back seat of her mother's silver sedan when flashing lights appeared in the mirror. They weren't speeding. They weren't swerving. Still, the officer approached with his hand already resting on his weapon. "Turn off the vehicle," he ordered, before her mother could even lower the window. Her mother complied, hands visible on the steering wheel. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step out. You matched a profile." Refugees. "A profile of what, officer?" He didn't answer. He only repeated the command, louder this time. Nadine remembered how tightly her mother's fingers gripped the wheel before letting go. She remembered the way the door closed, the metallic echo carrying more threat than sound ever could. She also remembered watching, through child's eyes, as her mother was searched on the side of the road. No reason given, no apology offered. When it was done, the officer only said, "You're free to go," as if freedom were something he owned. Her mother got back into the car, eyes forward, voice steady, stemmed. "Mother, we don't yell, Nadine. We document." That was the day Nadine stopped believing justice was automatic. It was something you had to fight for, calmly, relentlessly, with proof. Nadine never forgot the sound of that door closing, or the steadiness in her mother's voice. It did not make her fearful, it made her methodical. While others reacted, she began studying. First school debate, then constitutional law competitions, then internships in civil rights litigation. She learned that power didn't always roar. Sometimes it hid behind procedure, behind phrases like profile match and standard protocol. By the time she entered law school, she no longer saw the justice system as a shield, but as a weapon that needed responsible hands. Professor's voice, memory. "Your arguments don't rise in volume, they rise in precision." Thompson. She had made a silent promise then. If power could be abused through paperwork, it could be corrected through it too. The checkpoint wasn't just an interruption to her day. It was the very battlefield she had trained for. Simmons and, this time she wouldn't just witness the record. Shimmer would be the record. Crimson Ramirez stepped out of the second patrol SUV with the composure of someone arriving not to assess, but to confirm. He adjusted the body cam on his vest, the red indicator light blinking as it synced to the checkpoint feed. No greeting was exchanged between the two agents. The choreography was already in motion. IMS, "Occupant has not yet provided satisfactory compliance," Harker announced, loud enough for the nearby vehicles to hear, though Nadine had followed every command exactly. Misinformation nodded once, hand on the clasp of his gloves. His voice carried the sterile tone of rehearsed protocol. "Secondary search authorized under Jurisdictional Code 7-18, potential threat indicators in demeanor and verbal hesitation." Nadine turned slightly, her hand still on the hood. "I have not hesitated. I have asked for the legal basis of discretionary escalation." A flicked agent acknowledged her words. A father in a pickup truck leaned out his window, phone recording. "She's doing everything you're asking. Why is this escalating?" Harker did not turn toward the man. "Stay in your vehicle, sir. Any interference with federal inspection is a prosecutable offense." Ramirez stepped closer. "For officer safety, we are authorized to conduct a full pat-down and interior sweep." Disregain's breath stayed even. "Then document it accurately. I am not resisting, and I maintain my request for articulated suspicion. Relink restraint was not submission. It was testimony. Radio static crackled through Harker's comm unit. Dispatch voice. Unit Harker, confirm subject status. Contact with Nadine. Mark subject as non-compliant and prepare for detainment. Restroom detainment sent a visible ripple through the crowd. Engines idled louder, as if the vehicles themselves were holding their breath. Ramirez pulled on his gloves with a snap, stepping into position. The air thickened, not with chaos, but with inevitability. Agent Ramirez positioned himself at Nadine's side, shoulders squared, boots aligned with training precision, as if every inch of the moment had been rehearsed before she ever arrived. The cold snap of nitrile gloves echoed faintly off the hood as he tugged them into place. Subject will undergo a full contact inspection, he declared, not to Nadine, but to the crowd, like a warning to anyone who might question what they were about to witness. Nismatch African's voice remained steady. You are initiating an invasive search in public view without stating any articulable probable cause. This is an unlawful intrusion. Ramirez began anyway. He moved down her arms with clinical detachment, then along her sides. When his hands reached her lower back, the murmurs from the onlookers turned into open protest. A woman stepped out of her minivan, phone raised. She's cooperating! You can't touch her like that in front of everyone! Agent Harker pivoted sharply. Return to your vehicle immediately, or you will be detained as well. The woman froze but kept recording. Missionary did not flinch, though Ramirez's movements had crossed from cursory pat-down into invasive contact. She focused on her breathing, slow, measured. Every second was evidence. Every action was part of the record she would later present. This checkpoint is now operating outside lawful bounds, she said softly, intended not for the officers, but for every camera watching. Ramirez paused at her hip, glancing toward Harker as if awaiting the next cue. Harker's eyes narrowed. Gospel compartment next, he ordered. And with that, the search was no longer about her safety. Imprisonment, out finding something, or planting it. Ramirez opened the passenger door with a deliberate slowness that suggested caution, but the cameras caught his eyes, scanning not for danger, but for optics. He reached across the seat and unlatched the glove box. It dropped open with a hollow thud. Bishop's a small silver packet slid forward, landing neatly in his palm as if placed for display. Reckham Ramirez held it up between two fingers. Suspected controlled substance, he announced, projecting to the crowd, though the packet had no markings, no seal, no visible label, just a generic foil square. Nadine didn't move. Her voice remained calm. Maintain chain of custody. The packet was not in my possession. State for the record who had access to my vehicle before I arrived at this checkpoint. Ramirez didn't respond. Harker stepped in. Probable cause confirmed. Subject is being detained for transport. Gasps rippled through the onlookers. A bystander shouted, He palmed that! I saw his hand go out of view! Another voice called, Check the timestamps. His body cam wasn't facing the glove box. For a split second, Ramirez hesitated, his eyes flickering toward Harker, almost asking permission to proceed. Harker gave a single nod. Ramirez placed the packet into a clear evidence bag. Mission's no initial was written on the chain of custody line. The omission hung in the air heavier than any accusation. Nadine lowered her gaze, not in surrender, but in calculated preparation. They had just crossed the line from intimidation into fabrication, and that changed everything. The cuffs clicked shut around Nadine's wrists, tight, deliberate, metal pressing against skin already reddened from the search. Ramirez double-locked them, ensuring there would be no give. The action was not about security. It was about message. Agent Harker stepped into her line of sight. You are now in federal detention. You will remain silent unless addressed. Any statement you make, Nadine spoke over him, not with volume but precision. I do not waive my rights. You have not stated a lawful cause for arrest. This proceeding is now part of an active civil rights violation. Her voice carried just enough for the cameras, steady as if she were dictating to a stenographer. Simmons from the crowd yelled, "She didn't do anything! This is illegal!" Another shouted, "We've got this on 5 angles! Don't you dare turn those cameras off!" Ramirez took Nadine's arm, guiding her toward the patrol SUV. She did not resist. Every step was measured, dignified, her silence more powerful than any protest could have been. Harker opened the back door. "Evidence has been retrieved. Detainment is justified under federal interdiction protocol." Nadine paused, glancing back toward the hood of her car where the leather portfolio sat partially visible beneath sunlight. She turned her head just enough for Harker to hear her clearly. "Check the wallet." A sudden stillness overtook the scene, like a held breath before a verdict was read. Ramirez froze. Harker blinked once. The words were quiet, but everything changed. Agent Ramirez hesitated only a moment before pulling the wallet from Nadine's bag. He opened it with the casual expectation of a driver's license, and froze. His breathing hitched, barely detectable, but the shift in his posture was immediate. He straightened, eyes locked on the laminated identification card that bore the Department of Justice seal, holographic security strip, and name. Nadine E. Price. Authorized guest access. United States Attorney General. National Command Wing. Trimming. Ramirez's gloved hand trembled once. Shimmer stepped forward impatiently, snatching the wallet. The moment his eyes fell on the badge, his expression didn't change, but the color drained from his face. No one spoke. The crowd didn't yet understand, but they sensed it. A soft, rapid beeping sound emitted from Ramirez's radio, priority channel override. Dremeno, encrypted tone, "Unit Harker, confirm identification. This is command level. Secure the scene and await instruction." Harker's jaw clenched. Misguided, he looked uncertain, and Nadine said nothing at all. Agent Harker's fingers tightened around the wallet as if it might burn through his gloves. His radio crackled again, this time a different voice, one not usually heard over checkpoint frequencies. Command voice, encrypted, urgent. "Unit Harker, confirm visual. You are detaining the Attorney General's daughter. Stand down immediately. Supervisor en route. Do not engage further." Ramirez stepped back first. Then Harker did something he hadn't done once since Nadine arrived. He looked directly at her. "Remove the cuffs," the command voice ordered again. Ramiento's Harker didn't move fast enough. The on-site supervisor's vehicle screeched to a stop. Supervisor Dane Whitaker, face pale, stepped out before the engine fully died. His badge, Sector Chief Liaison, glinted in the sun. "Smith, uncuff her," Whitaker said, voice low, furious, controlled. "Now." Ramirez fumbled with the key, unlocking the restraints with shaking hands. Harker attempted formality. "There may be a misunderstanding." Whitaker cut him off. "You detained a federal classified guest under my jurisdiction. Every second you touched her is now evidence against you." Disrespect fell over the checkpoint. Phones were still filming. Nadine didn't gloat, didn't speak. Missions, she simply lowered her hands, slowly, as if reclaiming gravity itself. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Nationality, not because she had power, but because the system had just realized it abused someone who could expose all of it. Mission's Maya Chen sat in her car across from the checkpoint, Livestream still running in silent standby mode on her tablet. The moment the cuffs came off Nadine, she began pulling up her database of past complaints, records she had been tracking for months, each one dismissed as unsubstantiated or under review. Agent Ruiz joined the encrypted call. "Maya, I have 5 prior complaints naming Harker, all marked closed within 48 hours, same location, same language, failure to comply with secondary inspection." Ruiz's voice was tense but steady. There are more you don't have access to. Internal routing hides repeat offenders under performance metrics. They're not filing them as misconduct. They're categorizing them as checkpoint successes. Maya's fingers flew across the keyboard. On-screen entries populated. CC 2022074. Nurse detained. Vehicle searched. Nothing found. Impair CC 2023019. Student strip searched. Told he matched behavioral indicators. Prepared 112. Trucker held for 4 hours after asking to contact counsel. Each filed, each closed. No disciplinary action taken. Maya clicked open a timeline view. A pattern emerged instantly. Peaks in detentions aligned perfectly with quarterly funding reviews. Crimson exhaled. They're not stopping people randomly. They're meeting targets. Maya leaned back, realization dawning, not as surprise, but confirmation. This wasn't misconduct. It was policy. And Nadine wasn't the first victim. Simmons, she was simply the one they couldn't bury. Ruiz's voice lowered as he initiated a secure document share. A progress bar appeared on Maya's laptop, followed by a directory of internal CBP emails and performance reports. Subject: Q3 interdiction targets. Sector alignment. Misguided. Jumhurbash, upon ops supervisor at cbp.gov. 2 unit leads. Harker, Ramirez, El Cortez. Timestamp: 2025-07-02, 614. Submits. Checkpoint 4 remains below target for narcotics interdictions and behavioral detainments. Increased scrutiny recommended. Reminder: grant renewal depends on statistically demonstrable activity. Q3 bonuses are performance-based. Attach all detentions to secure transit metrics for expedited review. Smith Maya scrolled, her breath catching, not from shock, but from validation. Another email surfaced. Aggression. Bodycam discretion guidelines. From CBP legal liaison. Impoverished. To Sector 4 supervisors. Clips deemed irrelevant to officer safety may be redacted at local discretion prior to external review. Ensure footage supports interdiction outcomes. Ruiz spoke quietly. That line was used to justify removing context, like how Harker initiated searches. Then came the performance spreadsheet. BP Perf 2025Q3.XLSX. Columns: officer name, interdictions, detainments, funding credits, eligible bonus tier. Harker's name appeared near the top, his detainment numbers spiking in months before grant reviews. Maya whispered. They weren't enforcing law. They were producing metrics. Ruiz hesitated, then said the line that shifted the entire investigation. These aren't isolated abuses. They're business incentives. And now those incentives were exposed. The system hadn't malfunctioned. It was working exactly as designed. Maya clicked the file Ruiz had flagged. DHS 2024 RFP Secure Transit.XLSX. A graph dominated the first tab. Interdiction output versus funding allocation. The line for Sector 4 surged sharply upward every quarter preceding grant renewal deadlines. Misinformation afterwards, scrolling, revealed the incentive clause. Checkpoints interdiction activity directly contributes to eligibility for Secure Transit Phase 2 expansion funds. Sector leaders demonstrating proactive engagement will be prioritized for discretionary bonuses and equipment upgrades. IML. Another tab labeled Line Item 74-201 detailed the disbursement. Improperly, $4.7 million allocated to Sector 4 contingent upon behavioral detainment metrics. Maya's cursor hovered over a note in red text. Projected renewal value if activity maintained, $11.2 million. Shields, stunned, not by the number but the implication. Minutos, quietly. They weren't policing. They were qualifying. Riswapting, Ruiz added, leadership pushed agents to hit numbers, not from training, but from financial directives. Harker wasn't a rogue actor. He was their star performer. A final entry sealed it. Ignition. Memo ID. DHS Grant Secure Line 2025-08. RIA 5. Highlight enhanced interdiction success at checkpoints for upcoming press briefing. Attorney General scheduled to speak on operational effectiveness. Miraculous. The very program Nadine was delivering briefing documents for was being fueled by the abuse committed in her name. This wasn't coincidence. This was systemic profit. Crimson, and the most powerful law enforcement official in the nation, was about to unknowingly validate it, unless the truth came out first. Maya opened the video files Ruiz had sent. One by one, faces appeared. Ordinary Americans who had been silenced not by intimidation, but by paperwork. Clip 1. Victor Alvarez, 52, truck driver. They said my pupils were too reactive. I told them I had glaucoma. They strip-searched me on the side of the road. No charges, just, you may go, like they were granting me permission to exist. Clip 2. Danica Rowe, 28, nurse. Her eyes were wet, voice barely steady. I asked to call my husband. They told me asking for a phone call was an admission of guilt. Imprisonment. 3. A college student, face blurred. They kept saying I was fitting a behavioral pattern. That pattern was just me being nervous. Each story matched Harker's incident down to the phrasing. Then came the final file. Unedited dashcam footage, time-stamped months before, showed Harker's gloved hand entering a vehicle's cabin, exiting frame for 3 seconds, then reappearing holding a silver packet. Exactly like Nadine's. Maya leaned back, eyes wide. They repeated the same theater, and the government paid them for it. The camera didn't cut back to Nadine, but every viewer understood. She wasn't a single target. She was the moment the entire system got caught. Within hours, an official press release hit every local outlet, bearing the seal of the National Border Patrol Union. The headline read, Shimmer. Checkpoint protocol under political attack. Agents followed federal procedure. A suited spokesperson appeared on cable news, expression composed, tone measured to Project Credibility. Spokesperson. This incident is being mischaracterized by individuals with undisclosed political connections. Our agents executed a lawful interdiction under Section 287G. Any suggestion of misconduct is premature and dangerously irresponsible. Clips began circulating, not the full footage, but brief edited segments. In them, Nadine's calm assertion of rights was framed as verbal non-compliance. The packet discovered in her glove box was described as suspected narcotics consistent with trafficking concealment methods. Graphics appeared on screen. Attorney General's daughter involved in checkpoint altercation. Was she targeted or using influence? Online commentary fractured instantly. Some commenters praised the agents for holding everyone to the same standard, while others accused the government of protecting the elite. What the union didn't anticipate was what came next. Imiento's phone video from the original live stream, unedited, began trending. Millions of people had seen the full truth, and the narrative was slipping out of their control. Maya noticed it first. The same unmarked SUV had appeared behind her for the 3rd time that day, never passing, never dropping back. Its windows were tinted darker than regulation, the kind used by federal fleet vehicles assigned to internal investigations. Her phone buzzed with an alert. Unusual sign-in attempt on your email account. DOJ Secure Network detected. She hadn't tried to log in. Across town, Agent Ruiz swiped his keycard at Sector HQ. Immigration denied. Immigration, a red light flashed. Then a message. Report to Internal Compliance Office. His badge had been remotely disabled. Missions moments later, his personal phone lit up with an unknown number. A recorded voice played. Missions. Leaking protected CBP material is a federal offense. Cease contact with media immediately. Ruiz ended the call, his jaw set. They're moving fast, he texted Maya. They're scared. Timber. That same hour, a legal notice was delivered to Nadine's temporary residence, a formal request for her to refrain from public commentary during an ongoing review of her conduct. Missionary wasn't retreating. It was counterattacking, in silence, with procedure, through intimidation. Missions. And every move proved exactly why it needed to be exposed. The hall filled beyond capacity, overflowing into the parking lot, screens propped on folding chairs to accommodate those who wouldn't go home. On one side, residents held signs reading, "Keep our borders strong," and "Don't tie our agents' hands." On the other, posters showed still images from the checkpoint livestream with one message repeated. Who protects the protectors when the protectors turn on us? A local spokesperson spoke sharply into the microphone. Why should the daughter of a federal official get special treatment? Nadine stepped forward before the moderator could call her. Her voice was calm, clear, not elevated. I am not standing here because of my last name, she said. I am standing because what happened to me is happening to people who don't have one that anyone recognizes. Silence followed, not from agreement, but from impact. She scanned the room, eyes steady. This is not about border security versus rights. This is about whether our system rewards truth or statistics. A hush fell. Even those who disagreed couldn't look away. This was no longer a local incident. It had become a national reckoning, and it was only just beginning. The hearing room was already at capacity before the gavel struck. Rows of cameras lined the back wall, red lights blinking, live on every major network. A placard at the dais read, House Committee on Homeland Security, Emergency Oversight Session. In the front row, the agents involved in the checkpoint incident, Harker, Ramirez, and their supervising officer, sat stiffly, their posture more defensive than respectful. Agent Harker's badge had been removed. In its place, a plain nameplate. Witness. Committee Chairwoman Eleanor Whitcomb raised the gavel. This session will examine allegations of systemic civil liberties violations under federal authority, she said, voice echoing through the chamber. We are not here to debate opinions. We are here to examine evidence. Nadine entered quietly. There was no announcement, no escort, just a soft rustle as reporters turned, cameras instantly pivoting to her. She did not take the witness stand. Missions. She sat at the council table, portfolio before her, the same leather case seized at the checkpoint. The symbolism was not lost on anyone. Chairwoman Whitcomb. Let the record show Ms. Nadine Price is present as a registered witness and legal representative with standing under the U.S. Attorney General's office. A hush fell. Crimson, this was no longer a local incident. It was federal history in progress. Monitors throughout the chamber flickered to life, displaying a still frame from Harker's body cam, time-stamped 9/31/11. The footage began to play. Nadine standing compliant, hands visible. A split screen showed the chain of custody form with the signature line left blank. Missions. Committee Counsel Rivera. Agent Harker, is this your body camera footage? Harker shifted. It appears to be. Rivera advanced the video. Another window opened beside it. The internal email from Sector Supervisor. Increased interdictions needed for Q3 metrics. Grant renewal dependent on statistical performance. Rivera. Please read the highlighted portion aloud. Harker hesitated, then complied. The next slide displayed the secure transit funding graph, directly correlating detainment spikes with grant disbursement schedules. A murmur spread through the chamber. Friction. Then, the most damning footage appeared. Unedited dashcam from a prior victim showing Harker's hand reach inside a vehicle, followed by the same silver packet later claimed as evidence. Chairwoman Whitcomb. Agent Harker, is that packet the same type presented in Ms. Price's case? Silence. Yeah, the law required he answer. Bibbing, his voice barely rose above a whisper. Yes. The chamber fell utterly still. This was no longer misconduct. It was a documented pattern of institutional abuse. Committee Chairwoman Whitcomb conferred briefly with the ranking members, then lifted the microphone. This committee will now move to immediate vote regarding the temporary suspension and federal investigation of personnel involved, as well as the initiation of an independent audit of all secure transit checkpoint operations under DHS jurisdiction. Hands rose across the dais, one after another, bipartisan, decisive. Clerk. By unanimous vote, motion carries. A ripple moved through the chamber. Agent Harker's attorney placed a hand on his shoulder, but Harker no longer looked defiant. He looked like a man realizing the institution he relied on for protection was now protecting itself from him. A second motion was introduced. Chairwoman Whitcomb. Motion to recommend temporary suspension of Commissioner Randall Pierce pending full review of grant incentive practices. Again, unanimous. Press phones surged upward. Notifications exploded in real time across national feeds. Nadine didn't react. She simply closed the leather portfolio in front of her, its purpose fulfilled. Chairwoman Whitcomb. This committee finds reasonable evidence of systemic incentive structures leading to civil rights violations. Federal oversight will begin immediately. We are adjourned. As the gavel struck, the room exhaled. But outside these walls, a larger reckoning was only beginning, one that would change the system far beyond a single checkpoint. Missions. Within 7 days of the hearing, headlines replaced speculation with action. Simmons, CBP Commissioner Randall Pierce resigns amid quota scandal. Associated Press. DHS orders immediate suspension of secure transit incentive funding. Washington Post. Federal Oversight Board established to monitor checkpoint operations nationwide. C-SPAN live banner. Intermit. A memo bearing the Department of Justice seal circulated to every federal agency. DOJ Oversight Directive OD 2025-11. Missions. Effective immediately, all interdiction-related bonuses are suspended. Mandatory body cam footage must be retained in full with third-party custodial review. Violations will be prosecuted as evidence tampering under federal law. Shimmers resides on national broadcasts showed a steep drop in discretionary detainments. Another line, representing the filing of civil rights claims, rose sharply. A press briefing from the Department of Homeland Security aired across every major network. The Secretary of Homeland Security stood at the podium, visibly strained. Secretary, on record. The actions uncovered do not reflect the values of this nation or the mission of border security. Trust must be rebuilt, not demanded. Quietly, funding once earmarked for interdictive quotas was redirected to oversight, technology accountability, and community review panels. An internal audit report revealed that over 630 detainments in the past 3 years were invalid under constitutional standards. Names previously buried in complaint logs were now subjects of federal review. Footage of agents removing their badges circulated online, not out of protest, but compliance. The Secure Transit Initiative, once poised for expansion, now stood under suspension, pending a full legislative rewrite. And though her name was never spoken on the podium, one fact spread through every headline, every news feed, every whispered conversation in halls of power. Semantics. It only changed because one person refused to be silent. The marble columns of the Department of Justice building rose behind her, solemn beneath an overcast sky. Across the plaza, reporters gathered, not for scandal this time, but for policy reform being signed into federal mandate. Nadine stood alone at the edge of the steps, watching through the glass as her father placed his signature beneath the new oversight directive. No applause followed, no cameras turned toward her. And that was exactly how she wanted it. This moment wasn't about recognition. It was about restoration. He exhaled softly, a quiet release, as if the weight she had carried her entire life had finally shifted from silence into statute. Crimson, the newly signed policy, remained posted in the DOJ entryway, its text visible beneath the seal of the United States. For a brief moment, the bustle of Washington paused, not in celebration, but in recognition. Across the nation, people who had once stood silent at checkpoints, traffic stops, and inspection lanes saw themselves reflected in that single sheet of federal reform. If justice only responds when it is forced to see, the closing narration asked, what becomes of those who go unseen? In a country governed by law, who makes sure the law remembers its promise, to protect before it punishes? And that question was no longer directed at officials. It was directed at all of us.